Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. A very warm good morning to everyone. I hope all of you are doing good. And all those of you who have been asking how long, I'm sorry, but we are now back live here. Sorry for the delay. There was some logistical issue because of which we could not go live on time. I hope all of you are doing good. I welcome you all to today's session of the Hindu Newspaper Analysis, where every single day we try and analyze the most important news stories from the Hindu newspaper. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning, good morning. I hope all of you also attended all the sessions of our Target Prelims 2023 series. Just in case you missed out on any of the sessions or Target Prelims series, please make sure you see the recorded version on our YouTube channel. The YouTube channel playlist is available for all of you. This is subject wise. Whichever subject that you feel the need to revise, please make sure that you go ahead and you do see the session for the Target Prelims 2023. Having said that, let's come back to what we have today. These are the important topics that we have taken up from the Hindu newspaper for discussion. We'll first be starting our discussion with a deep analysis of the Shiv Sena issue. What did the Supreme Court say exactly? Then we'll be discussing how the Supreme Court recently has changed a bail-related law. If you remember, yesterday also we had discussed something related to bail. Now again, an article has been written on what exactly is the bail law in India and how is the Supreme Court trying to change it. Then we will be discussing the law to prevent sexual harassment at workplace in India. As you know, this is in the news ever since the wrestlers have been protesting at Jantar Mantar. There have been allegations that under the Prevention of Sexual Harassment Act, maybe the law is not being followed properly. We do not have internal complaints committee. That is what we will be discussing. And then we will be discussing about how Aadhaar enabled payment system is leading to a lot of financial scams these days. There have been many news reports where people alleged that because of their Aadhaar card being linked to their PAN account, a lot of people are facing financial fraud and money is being deducted from their bank account. Then from prelims point of view, we'll be discussing a new scheme launched by the Government of India. The government will be launching one-stop center for zero waste, and then Defense Ministry's initiative called iDEX has achieved a big milestone. These are the topics for discussion that we have for you today. Without any further delay, let's see the first one. The first topic that we have here is about the Shiv Sena issue. Now, as you know, a couple of days back, the Supreme Court gave a verdict on the Shiv Sena issue. I'm sure all of you know what the Shiv Sena issue is. Shiv Sena, that is a political party from Maharashtra, got divided into two parts. One part led by Eknath Shinde, who is right now the Chief Minister of Maharashtra. The other part that is led by Uddhav Thackeray. Both of them believe that their part is the real original Shiv Sena. This was a matter that had to be decided by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court had to take a call on number one, whether the governor of Maharashtra was right in asking the ex-Chief Minister Uddhav Thackeray to prove his majority. Second thing that was asked was Uddhav Thackeray's government the legitimate government? Should that government be asked to come back to power or not? The third thing that the Supreme Court had to answer was, what about the disqualification of the members of Legislative Assembly, the MLAs who were disqualified from the either side? Does the disqualification actually will be decided by the Speaker, or the Supreme Court can take a call? One more question that the Supreme Court had to answer was about the whip. Which side of the two can actually appoint a whip of the political party? These were the things that the Supreme Court had to answer. Now, we will analyze this one by one. What did the Supreme Court say and what is the law about it? The first thing about the floor test. The Supreme Court said that yes, governor has the power to call the Chief Minister for a floor test. Floor test means when the CM or the Prime Minister, in case of the center, they have to prove their majority in the lower house. This is called the floor test. When there are allegations that maybe your government is a minority government, they don't have enough support of MPs or MLAs, the president at the center or the governor at the state level may ask the government for a floor test. Floor test means you have to prove whether you have the majority or not. So the governor of Maharashtra had called for a floor test. The Supreme Court said that the governor was wrong in calling for a floor test. Why? as per the Supreme Court, the governor did not have any material or any proof to suggest that he should have called for a floor test. The government was running properly, there was no problem with the government, there were no allegations. So what came in the mind of the governor that he called for a floor test? Meaning that this is an indication that the Supreme Court does not want the governor to interfere in the legislative matters. The Supreme Court did not want the governor to interfere in who will form the government, who will not form the government. Second, the Supreme Court said that although the governor was wrong in calling for a floor test, on the other hand, the Chief Minister Uddhav Thackeray also resigned before proving that he has the majority. Meaning that Uddhav Thackeray knew that he does not have the majority. Because if he would have had the majority, he would have just gone ahead and proved that in the floor test. So on one hand, the governor was wrong when it comes to why did he call the floor test. But on the other hand, just because of that, we cannot ask the government to come back to power. We cannot have the Chief Minister back in power because he resigned even before proving that he has a majority. The question for the author is posing this question: can the first wrong be ignored if it started the sequence of activities? First wrong was done by the governor. Can you ignore that and say, no, I will not bring back the government now because the CM resigned before proving the majority? This is a big question. Because right now, the verdict of the Supreme Court is interpreted in different ways by both the sides. Both the sides are claiming that the verdict is in their favor. Uddhav Thackeray's side is saying, see, we told you governor did the wrong thing, so we are right. On the other hand, the other side is saying that, see, Supreme Court did not call back the Uddhav Thackeray government, so we are right. So, this is a situation where actually both the sides are trying to prove that they did the right thing and the Supreme Court has ruled in their favor. The second big question Supreme Court answered was the whip. I am sure all of you know about the whip. Whip is the name of an office also, or a post. It is also the name of an order that is issued. Every political party has a whip. To understand whip, you can understand whip as, let's say, admin of a WhatsApp group. So if there's a WhatsApp group of all the BJP MPs, BJP whip will be the admin. He will be the one posting messages that please come tomorrow, you have to vote for yes, you have to vote for no, you have to abide by the order. So he can be considered as a whip of, or as the admin of the WhatsApp group. Whip is the party officer whose responsibility is to make sure that the message of the party is spread to all the members of the party. If you don't abide by the order of the whip, you can be disqualified from your membership under the anti-defection law. The problem here is when parties get divided into two parts, when both the sides say we are the real party, we are the real party, then who decides the whip? This is a big question. Is the whip of the original party, the original group, considered to be the original whip, or is it the second group that is considered as the original whip? This is where the question was. Now over here, the Supreme Court said that the whip should have been the one that is appointed by the political party and not by the legislative party. Please understand, there is a difference between political party and legislative party. If you look at Congress, for example, who is the president of Congress? Who is the president of Congress right now? What do you think? The elections were held recently. Who is the president of the Congress? Yes, Mr. Mallikarjun Kharge is the president of the Congress. However, if you look at within the parliament, let's say within the Lok Sabha, who is the leader of the Congress? Who is the leader of opposition? Within the Lok Sabha, the leader of opposition is not Mallikarjun Kharge. Who is that? What do you think? Within the Lok Sabha, who is the leader of opposition? That is not Mallikarjun Kharge. Who is that? I'm still not getting the correct answer. That's interesting. No Rahul Gandhi, no Sonia Gandhi, no Shashi Tharoor. Yes, finally someone giving the correct answer. Sudhir Ranjan Chaudhary. Sudhir Ranjan Chaudhary, the Congress member of parliament from West Bengal, he is the one who is the leader of opposition in the Lok Sabha. So as you can see, in Congress also, If you look at the political party, the president is someone else, but within the parliament, the leader of opposition is Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary. So these are two separate acts. Now let's assume Mr. Mallikarjun Kharge, he appoints someone as the whip, and on the other hand, Mr. Sudhir Ranjan Chaudhary, he appoints someone else as the whip. Then whose whip should be considered as the official authority? That is the question that Supreme Court had to answer. Whether the whip should be appointed by the head of the political party or whether the whip should be appointed by the head of the legislative party. The Supreme Court in this case said that the whip has to be appointed by the political party. By the political party. And not because of the legislative party or not the legislative party. The reason being that the political party is the one that arranged for resources for the members of the Legislative Assembly to contest elections in the first place. The political party helped the candidate in winning the elections, and that is why the political party is the one that actually should have the whip. Now over here, this is where it gets slightly interesting because there is not much clarity, because the Supreme Court in the same judgment also said when there is a split that occurs in a party, there are two factions. No faction can be called as the original party. Please understand here. The Supreme Court in their judgment used a statement which has created a lot of confusion. The Supreme Court has said that when a split occurs in a party, two factions are made, then no single faction can claim to be the real party. So on one hand, the Supreme Court is saying that the political party and not the legislative party should appoint the whip, but the Supreme Court has not clarified which of the two sides, that is the side led by Uddhav Thackeray or the side led by Eknath Shinde, which of the two sides is the real party. Which party is the one that has the right to appoint a whip. So in the Supreme Court judgment, rather than giving more clarity, as per the author, the Supreme Court has even given rise to more confusion. Rather than clearly telling which side is the original party, which side is not the original party, the Supreme Court has, rather than taking a concrete decision, Supreme Court has actually increased the confusion. Rather than telling which side is the original party, they have said that there is no original party so far. There is also one more issue. If you compare this with the anti-defection law, anti-defection law in the 10th schedule clearly says that an elected member of a house will belong to a party on whose ticket they have won the elections. Meaning that doesn't matter if the MLA right now is supporting the Eknath Shinde group, but he won on the ticket of the Shiv Sena, which was led by Uddhav Thackeray. So the 10th schedule is very clear about which party should be considered as the original party, but the Supreme Court has not abided by that. This is where the problem is. As per the author, the Supreme Court has not given clarity which is the original party. They have not really gone ahead and abided by the definition of the 10th schedule. As you all know, 10th schedule has the anti-defection law. In the 10th schedule again, if you look here, 10th schedule clearly says original political party in relation to member of a house means a political party to which he belongs when the elections were being contested. This is why if a member of parliament now, if they start supporting some other group, that doesn't really mean that their political party will change. This is the definition given in the 10th schedule. Now, as you all know, there have been multiple recommendations given about the anti-defection law. There have been a lot of demands that the anti-defection law should change. Anti-defection law does not really allow the legislator, the MPs or the MLAs to voice their own concern, to voice their own opinion. The MPs or the MLAs, other than voting from their own conscience, they have to abide by whatever their party is saying. This is the problem with the anti-defection law. This is why in countries such as US, there is no anti-defection law. In US, for example, if there is a member of parliament from the Democratic Party, he is free to choose in whatever way that he wants to vote. A Democrat Party member does not really have to vote with the Democrat Party all the time. Similarly, with the Republican Party member can vote in any way that they want. In India, that is not the case. The problem here is, let's take a very simple example. Let's say while contesting election, a candidate promised the voters that vote for me, I will build a big hospital here. And now his party is building hospital in some other city and not his city. He cannot do anything. He has to support his party, because otherwise he will be disqualified from the membership of the legislature. That is the problem with anti-defection law. The anti-defection law, rather than allowing the members of parliament to express their own opinion, rather than allowing the members of parliament to vote in favor or to vote or to work in favor of their voters, they actually force them to work in favor of their political parties. So there have been multiple committees who have suggested reforms in the anti-defection law. There is the Dinesh Goswami committee that has recommended that disqualification should only be for specific reasons, not in a lot of cases. For example, they have said that disqualification should only be when membership is given up voluntarily, someone resigns from the party, or if a member abstains from voting. Law Commission report also suggested, Election Commission also suggested that there should be changes in the anti-defection law. The one idea that many people agree to is anti-defection law should only apply in those cases when it comes to no confidence motion. So if a member of a party is compelled to vote in favor of their party, it should only be when the government itself is at stake, when the government stability will be compromised. On normal laws, normal issues, the members of parliament should be allowed to vote as per their conscience, as per the promises that they made to their voters. This is a suggestion, but again, no political party would want that, because every political party at the end of the day would want that all the power should reside with them. This was our first article for the day. Let me quickly take up a few comments before we move on to the second one. Anujaya, okay, a lot of questions. Whip and official whip are terms as different. No, whip and official whip is the same. There is only, so whip is a word that is used for member of the party who is given the responsibility, and the order also that is issued. So usually the order that is issued is called the official whip, but its whip is the same. Whip is mandatory to follow for the members of political party. Will this line as it is be true or not? Not all the whips are mandatory. There are different types of whips. 1 line, 2 line, 3 line whips. The 3 lines one are the ones that are mandatory. 1 line whips are not really mandatory. They are mostly about attending the member, attending the house session, etc. So those are not really mandatory. Okay, then let me take up a few more questions. Vaishna is saying, if the speaker is made independent, that is by resigning from MP post, will it help the cause of anti-defection law? Yes, it will help the cause. Apart from that, setting up a time limit on the speaker to take a call, that will also help the cause. So yes, it can help the cause, but again the idea is, at the end of the day, every party who comes to power, the idea is that all of them want to concentrate power in their hand. They don't want to dilute power. So it's not really practical to expect a political party to empower the speaker more by allowing him or her to legislate or allowing him or her to take decision in an independent manner. But yes, ideally, the speaker should be independent. Chico is saying difference between political party and legislative party. Chico, as I said, the difference is simple. Those who are elected members of parliament, let's say from the BJP who are elected members of parliament, those are called legislative party. On the other hand, BJP has many other members also who are not members of parliament, who are just working for the party. So that will be called political party. That is the difference. So political party will be the one that doesn't really necessarily have, or those don't really necessarily have representation in the parliament. Those BJP members of parliament, they will be called a legislative party. That is the difference. Shrikant is saying, what is stopping the reforms from happening? What is stopping the reforms from happening? The political parties in power, as simple as that. Sitting here as someone who is neutral, you might expect that the reform should take place. But think of it from the point of view of a political party who is in power. The political party who has captured power would want to take as much powers in their hands rather than removing or withdrawing their powers. Okay. Perfect. Let's move on then. The second article that we want to discuss is about the idea of bail. Now, please understand what is this article all about. For understanding this, there is a concept that you need to know. There is a concept called default bail. There's a concept called default bail. Now, please try and understand what exactly is default bail. How does it work? So, let's assume that you have been charged with a certain crime, XYZ. Let's say you have been charged with a murder. Okay. Now, if you have been charged with a certain crime and then you are arrested, for every crime, there is a specific time limit within which the police has to file the charge sheet. It depends on case to case, depends on whatever punishment or whatever charges have been formed against you. So let's say there's a case of murder against you, there's a specific time limit within which the investigators, the police must file the charge sheet. Let's assume that for your crime, 60 days is the maximum limit within which the charge sheet has to be filed. Okay. Now, if the police is not able to file the charge sheet in this time period, if the police has been given 60 days to file the charge sheet, but they have not been able to file the charge sheet within 60 days, then you will be given default bail. This is the idea of default bail. Default bail doesn't mean that you have committed the crime or not committed the crime. Default bail is not related to whether you are guilty or not. Default bail only means that the police, investigative agencies were not able to file the charge sheet in the maximum time period given. Please remember this. It has nothing to do with what exactly is the merit of the case. It has nothing to do whether you are guilty or you are not guilty. It just has to do with whether the police or the investigative agencies were able to file the charge sheet or not. Now let's go forward on the same concept. Now all of you know what is default bail, right? As I said, default bail is available when the investigative agencies don't file the charge sheet within the stipulated time. Now, what have the investigative agencies done? What they have done is, investigative agencies have found a loophole here. The loophole here is, let's try and understand. Let's say there is a 90-day limit on a certain case. Within 90 days, the police had to file the charge sheet. Okay. Now, police knows that within 90 days, they will not be able to investigate the matter. So, they have to find a loophole. What loophole do they find? Within 90 days, they file an incomplete charge sheet. They will write some random point, they will just file the charge sheet and they will say, see, we have filed the charge sheet. We will complete it later on, but at least we have filed it. It's like saying that, let's say, the teacher asks you for your homework, you have not completed the homework, so what option do you have? Either you tell the teacher you have not completed the homework, so you will be punished. Rather than doing that, what do? You just present half-baked homework. You just do half of the questions, you just give it to the teacher and ask the teacher to check it, hoping that nothing wrong will happen. This is what the police and the investigative agencies do. The police and the investigative agencies, because they have this time limit and if they are not able to complete their investigation, they just file any random, any half-baked charge sheet. Supreme Court got angry with this and Supreme Court said that if half charge sheet is filed, if the charge sheet is not proper, even then default bail shall be given. Let me repeat. The Supreme Court got angry with this practice and Supreme Court said even if half charge sheet is filed, even if incomplete charge sheet is filed, it will be equal to no charge sheet and default bail shall be given. Supreme Court gave this verdict in Ritu Chhabadia case. This was a Ritu Chhabadia case. Again, Ritu Chhabadia case was that if charge sheet is incomplete, then the person still deserves the default bail. That was a Ritu Chhabadia case in which the Supreme Court said this. Now what has happened? Why are we discussing this? Supreme Court has taken back their decision of the Ritu Chhabadia case. The Government of India, through the Solicitor General, had requested the Supreme Court to take back their decision of the Ritu Chhabadia case, and the Supreme Court has taken back their decision. This is why it is in the news. Let me repeat one by one what happened. First, what is default bail? You get a default bail if the police or the investigative agencies were not able to file the charge sheet within the given time period. Then what did the police do as a loophole? If they were not able to complete the investigation, they just filed an incomplete report. Supreme Court got angry with it, so they decided in the Ritu Chhabaria case that if incomplete bail or incomplete charge sheet is filed, even then default bail will be given. Now Supreme Court has taken back this verdict. Supreme Court has taken back the Ritu Chhabaria verdict. Now this is what the article is about, that the Supreme Court taking back the Ritu Chhabaria verdict is a bad thing. Why? Because the accused also has certain rights. Around the world, including in India, the idea is simple, that you have to assume that the person is innocent until proven guilty. So until the person has been proven guilty, you have to assume that the person is innocent, and you cannot just keep the person in the jail without the proof that is required by the authorities. This is a problem. These charge sheets, which have to be filed usually within 60 to 90 days, are usually delayed by the police due to various reasons. Either the police doesn't have enough resources, or the police doesn't have enough means to investigate the matter, but for whatever reason, this leads to the concept of default bail. Now the idea here is, in the Ritu Chhabaria case also, what the Supreme Court said was not really something new. In Ritu Chhabaria case also, what did the Supreme Court say? Supreme Court just said that if charge sheet is not filed on time, then the person should be released on default bail. This is something that has been going on for a long time anyway. So it was nothing new that came up in the Ritu Chhabaria case. On the other hand, the concept of bail itself, as you know, is something that has been debated quite a lot. Remember, just yesterday we were discussing a news from the Hindu newspaper about the bail. I'll just remind you, yesterday's news was that the Supreme Court had said that if someone's bail application is denied for a long time, or if the bail order is too long, that also violates a person's personal liberty. Remember, we just discussed that yesterday. So again, the bail concept is in the news. Now the term bail has not been defined in the CRP, that is the Criminal Procedure Code, but the bail concept is simple. That is, if the crime has not been proven, you should not be devoid of your freedom. Only when the crime has been proven, only then you should be punished, only then you should be sent to jail. That is why the bail should be given. So bail allows you to go out of the jail with certain restrictions. Certain restrictions on movement. Police might tell you that you can't go outside the city or you can't leave the country, etc. Also, bail is not given if the offense is so serious that it is assumed that if you go out, you will tamper with the evidence, so it's dangerous for you to go out, then the bail can be denied. But usually, the bail is given in most of the cases. Now, you might also have seen there's a concept called non-bailable offenses. You might have seen this as well, non-bailable offense. For example, drunk driving is a non-bailable offense. So if you are, let's say, drunk and you are driving, that's a non-bailable offense. Non-bailable offense, remember this, non-bailable offense does not mean that the bail will not be given. Please understand the difference. On one hand, there are bailable offenses. Bailable offenses means it is your right to get the bail. So you just ask for the bail, whatever documents are asked, submit the documents, you will be given the bail. That is called bailable offense. Non-bailable offense, on the other hand, doesn't mean that the bail will not be given. It just means that now magistrate will decide whether the bail is to be given or not. So non-bailable doesn't mean that bail will not be given. Non-bailable just means it is not your right to ask for a bail. The magistrate will decide on a case-by-case basis whether in this case a bail should be given or should not have been given. That is the difference between bailable and not bailable. There is one more thing that many of you might have heard of time and time again. There is a phrase that is used, bail is the rule and jail is the exception. Bail is the rule and jail is the exception. This is a phrase used time and time again. It was very famously used by Justice V.R. Krishna Iyer Again, the same judge that is responsible for introducing the concept of PIL in India. Remember, when you read about PIL, Justice P.N. Bhagwati and Justice V.R. Krishna Iyer, these are the two judges that were credited with introducing the concept of PIL in India. The same judge very famously said that bail is the rule, jail is the exception. However, the problem is, especially in the lower courts, especially in the trial courts, district courts, etc., this is not usually followed. Especially in the lower courts, getting the bail is not that easy. Getting the bail becomes pretty difficult in many cases because there is a lot of corruption that is involved there. So, although this has been a concept that the Supreme Court wants the other courts to follow, but this has not been done. I'll remind you one more thing. Tell me this, when do we have the Constitution Day of India? When do we celebrate the Constitution Day? And then I'll continue on that. Why is it related to this? When do we celebrate the Constitution Day of India? And don't Google. Tell me without Googling. Okay, it's 26th of November. So what happens is, on 26th of November, when we have the Constitution Day, it is usually celebrated at various places, including the Supreme Court. So Supreme Court usually has a big event on the Constitution Day, and they invite a lot of different types of personalities. So what happened was, on the last Constitution Day, remember this, on the last Constitution Day, they had invited the President of India. The President of India made a speech where she talked about why are the prisons overflowing in India. So in India, the capacity of the prisons is much lower than the number of prisoners that we have. In jail cells where there are supposed to be 2 people, there are 4 or 5 people that are kept. One of the reasons is, again, the bail concept has become very difficult. Because what happens is, especially in non-bailable offences, since the magistrate decides whether the bail is to be given or not to be given, this is where a lot of corruption now starts to creep in. Someone gives the money to the magistrate and says, or the judge, please don't give him the bail. And this is what makes the situation very bad. At the lower levels, at the trial court especially, we do have most of the cases where getting a bail becomes difficult, even though the cases might not be very tough. And the problem is, you have to understand, sitting at the very top, the Supreme Court cannot be expected to look at even the smallest of courts. To answer this question for me, is the Supreme Court responsible for the operation of the district court? Is the Supreme Court responsible for how the working of the district court is ongoing? Are they responsible or are they not responsible? No. Then who is responsible? If the Supreme Court is not responsible for how the district courts are working, then who is responsible? If the answer is no, then what is actually the answer? Yes, the answer is the high courts. The high courts are the ones that have the power of superintendence over their district courts. So whatever courts are in the state, it is the high court that has to take them into consideration, and not really the Supreme Court. So we can't expect the Supreme Court only to go ahead and do this time and time again. This was the second article for the day. Lakshmi asking why Supreme Court took back the verdict, I think you mean. Lakshmi, Supreme Court took back the verdict because Solicitor General from the side of the government had argued that please don't do this, please allow the police more time. Police doesn't have enough time, so please take back the verdict. That is why, on the request of the Solicitor General, the Supreme Court took back the verdict. Shivani saying, is this act of backing its judgment by Supreme Court, is it part of revisory judicial? I'm not sure what is revisory judicial. Let's understand in very simple language. They have taken back their judgment. Let's just keep it that simple. Dharani Anurag has a question. Can the police beat the accused during investigation? Legally they cannot, but again there are no cameras. Police anyways is expert in beating people at places which doesn't leave a mark on your body. So officially they cannot, legally they cannot, but if they do, it won't be an exception. Then I have a question by Chotan. Who provides a time limit to the police? Chotan, it is written in the CRPC. The Code of Criminal Procedure tells us what time limit will be given to police and what kind of offences. Ashwini saying Solicitor General versus Attorney General. Solicitor General works under the Attorney General. So there's Attorney General, then there's Solicitor General, and then there are additional Solicitor Generals also if the government wants. Attorney General is a constitutional position, Solicitor General is not a constitutional position. Then I have a question. There's someone who asked, if you're a Hindi student over here, we have a separate YouTube channel called BYJU'S IAS Hindi. You can go there, you can find the same analysis in Hindi language over there, so go ahead and check that out. If you have an issue understanding the English language, please go ahead, check out our Hindi channel where you can find the same articles being discussed and you can go there. Then, yeah, Shivani, so that's what I'm saying. Let's keep it in a simple language. They took back their own judgment, as simple as that. Why do you want to give a phrase to it? Okay, let's go ahead then. The next article that we have here is about sexual harassment at the workplace. Unfortunately, it is still a reality in India. Although we do have many laws, although we do have a lot of different types of demands made about the law to be made much stronger, but we do have these issues. As you know, we have a law called POSH. POSH stands for Prevention of Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace. Prevention of Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace. I'm sure all of you would be aware of something called the Vishakha Guidelines. Right? Am I correct in assuming that all of you know the Vishakha Guidelines? Okay, so those who don't know, let me quickly repeat what exactly is this. So there was a case of a lady in Rajasthan called Bhavri Devi. So Bhavri Devi was a social worker who was working on a Rajasthan government project. As a part of her job, she tried to stop a child marriage from happening. So she saw a child marriage, she intervened, she was trying to stop that. And because those people whose families were getting married, they got so angry. They were men who gang raped her, that is Bhavri Devi. Now this became a very sensational case because the issue was she was at her workplace. So there was a lady who was gang raped at her workplace because that was her place of work. So that became a very infamous case. That was a Bhavri Devi case. Now, because she came from a poor family, she did not have the resources. So she did not know how to approach the court. Also, the people who were involved in this case were powerful and they were rich, etc. So the case did not really go anywhere until a few NGOs came for her help. So there were multiple NGOs that came to help her out. One of the NGOs was called Vishakha. That is why the name is Vishakha Guidelines. So there were multiple NGOs that held her. One of the NGOs was called Vishakha. So when the case was filed on behalf of Bhavri Devi in the Supreme Court, that became the Vishakha case or Vishakha Guidelines case because the NGO name was Vishakha. Now the Supreme Court in this case had said that it is very unfortunate that we do not have a law against sexual harassment at workplace in India. Because the parliament has not made a law, we will make guidelines. So Supreme Court made Vishakha Guidelines of 1997. Based on the Vishakha Guidelines of 1997, finally the parliament passed a law called Prevention of Sexual Harassment at Workplace 2013. So this was a law that was finally made. Now why is it in the news? As you know, our wrestlers, many of those who have won medals at Olympics, Commonwealth, Asian Games, they are protesting at Jantar Mantar against the head of the Indian Wrestling Federation. They have been asking the government to take some action against the head of the Wrestling Federation. The problem is, why is it in the news? Because it has come to light that the Wrestling Federation of India itself is not following this law. Why? The law says that in every organization having 10 or more than 10 employees, it is mandatory that the organization must have something called the Internal Complaint Committee, ICC. So every organization having 10 or more than 10 members should form an Internal Complaint Committee headed by a female. This committee should be empowered. Any women employer or even not an employer, even if there is a woman who visits that office and the women faces some sexual harassment, she should be allowed to complain to this committee. This is called the Internal Complaint Committee. This is mandatory under the POSH Act. As per the law, there are 5 circumstances under which a complaint can be filed. It's not just about sexual harassment. It even includes humiliating treatment which can affect the health or safety, interfering with work or creating an intimidating environment, that can also be a reason for complaint, explicit or implicit threat about future employment or current employment. These are the 5 reasons under which there can be a complaint that can be filed. Please remember, the complaint can be filed not just by women employers, but not just women employees, but even if there's a woman that is visiting an office, if she's a contractual worker, even a visitor, all of them can file this complaint to the Internal Complaints Committee. Now, this Internal Complaints Committee is compulsory for those which have more than 10 employees. So what about those companies which have less than 10 employees? Because a lot of companies have a business model where they have very few full-time employees, 4 or 5, and they have a lot of other contractual employees. So they will say, oh, we don't have 10 employees, then we will not form the committee. For them also there is a law. For them, we have something called a local committee. So at the local level, it is the responsibility of the district administration. So the DM, the district collector, they will ensure that there's a local committee that is made. Any company that has less than 10 employees, their employees can complain to this committee. So this local committee will be formed by the district administration, open to those companies having less than 10 employees, those working in the informal sector, domestic workers, all of them can come in and they can file a complaint. The allegation is that Wrestling Federation of India and many other sports federations do not have the ICC. They do not have the Internal Complaint Committee, although it has been mandated by the law. This committee, or as per the law, how can the issue be settled? Please understand, this is an important point from the examination point of view. As per the law, issue can be resolved in 2 ways. First, through conciliation. But conciliation cannot be a financial settlement. Means you cannot have the person pay some money and then shut the mouth. No. It can be conciliation. Conciliation means maybe the person apologized, the other person agreed, but there cannot be exchange of money. Please remember that. Second, there may be a complaint filed to the police, inquiry may be taken up. These are the 2 ways in which the complaint can be resorted. Also, the local complaint committee has to get the complaint within 3 to 6 months. So within 3 to 6 months of the incident, you have to file the complaint. The committee will work on the basis of principles of natural justice. The committee will work on the basis of principles of natural justice. And I'll just discuss what is principles of natural justice in just a bit. Also, those employers who are not abiding by the law, they will be fined up to 50,000 rupees if they don't form Internal Complaints Committee. The Internal Complaints Committee also has to submit an annual report to the district administration about what are the number of complaints that were given to them, what did they do about the complaints, what happened after this, etc., etc. All this has to be done. Now, there are a lot of issues with this act. First, as I said, most sports federations in India do not have the Internal Complaint Committee. Second, there is no body that is responsible for implementing the law. So there is no regulatory agency that has been made responsible for implementing the law. Third problem, most of women work in informal sector, so they don't even know how and where to complain. The other problem is, in these cases, collecting evidence is very difficult. Let's say something happens in a closed room. Who do you trust? Do you trust one person or the other person? Who do you trust on the allegation side? The other side of the problem is, men are not included here. What if there is a man in the office who has had to go through this kind of a problem? He is not covered under the law. That also becomes a problem. It is just specifically made for women. They can file complaint. Men are not covered under this, because again, you can have similar situations with men as well. These are some of the issues that we have with the law. Now, let's come to the idea of what is principles of natural justice. See, understand something. When you go to the court, for example, when you go to the court has a certain procedure to follow. Let's say, I'll give you an example. Let's say two people have a case and they go to the court. On the day of the verdict, one side comes and the other side is absent. Then the court cannot just go ahead and start deciding the case. They will have to give some time to the other party to come in. These are many loopholes in the judicial system. The advocates know it very well, and that is how they exploit the loopholes. That is why many of the judgments are delayed for a long time. On the other hand, there is another way in which these can work, that is called principles of natural justice. Please understand this, and this is your homework as well. There are multiple organizations in India, quasi-judicial organizations mainly, that have to work on principle of natural justice. Please understand this. The hint that I am giving you is, any organization that is created by the parliament to provide speedy justice, please understand this, any organization that has to provide speedy justice as a goal will always work on principles of natural justice, because if they work on the code of civil procedure, then they will not be able to give verdict in a time-bound manner. Principles of natural justice allow you to bypass many of the laws. You don't have to go by the law that the verdict will start now and then the evidence will come, the other person will come. So do search about which are the organizations that have to abide by principles of natural justice. You can let me know in the comment section later on which are these organizations. Now, first let me tell you what are principles of natural justice. So there are mainly three principles of natural justice. First principle is, no one should be the judge in their own case. No one should be the judge in their own case. So if the case is filed against you, you cannot be the judge. That is the first principle of natural justice. Can you give me an example of where this is violated? Can you give me an example of where this is violated? That is, judge or the accused cannot be the own judge. Okay, Deepak Mishra, yes, contempt of court is a very good example. Contempt of court is a perfect example of violation of this. What is happening in contempt of court? You say something against the judiciary, and judiciary itself then starts to preside over that case. So that's a prime example of this not being followed. Second principle of natural justice. You have to hear the other party. Means before giving the judgment, every party has the right to put forward their views. You cannot give any verdict without hearing all the parties. That is the second one. Third, inquiry should be held in good faith and without bias. These are the three things that have to be kept in mind for principle of natural justice. Apart from that, these bodies don't have to follow the rules of the court. This is what you mean by principles of natural justice. You can't be the judge in your own case. You have to hear all the sides before deciding. And third, the decision has to be given in good faith without any bias. That is called principles of natural justice. These are some of the important points about the prevention of sexual harassment law as we have in India, about how exactly does it work. There are many problems with the law. Just imagine, in India anyways employment is very hard to get. Many people are jobless. Not many people would go and file a complaint against their boss, because people value their job, their employment more than other things, which is a sad reality. But the problem is, and you can also imagine this, you also know, if you're working at a place where your office is not following all the rules, even then you will not go and complain anywhere, because you don't want to put your own job into jeopardy. That is the harsh reality. Let's go ahead then. Do I have any comments? Let me take those before I go ahead. Ashok, no, I'm sure all of you are not jobless. You may be jobless by choice, but I'm sure you're not jobless by force. Let me see if there are a few comments before I go. Yes, the Deepak Mishra case is a classic example of the contempt of court. Abhishek Singh is saying, why a man is always guilty until proven innocent? I don't think that is the case. If that is the case with you, I pity you. I don't think you can say a man is proven guilty until proven innocent. Then I have a question from a person whose name is Blue. What if higher official commit harassment and ICC suppress the complaint. What is the solution? See, if this is happening, then you can again approach the district administration. The district administration in such a case is always there to help you out in such cases. Shrikant is saying, does BCCI have ICC? Seems like a trick question. BCCI has the ICC in their pocket, if you can understand what I mean. But yes, that is the answer to your question. BCCI does have an ICC in their own pocket. Then I have a question. Why can't the law change for minimum 10 employees to 1? Because when you have an organization which doesn't even have 10 employees, how will you make a committee? It will be too much of a hassle. That is why. Is POSH applicable to both formal and informal organizations? Yes, it is applicable to both formal and informal organizations. Swati is saying, why women condition is not improved? I think to answer that, I'll have to take a 3-hour session. So I don't think I can answer this right now, why women condition. I would just say the condition has improved. It's not that the condition has not improved. It has improved. You have to look at it in terms of numbers, how many women are a part of workforce now. The average age of women is increasing. The average participation of women in the higher education is increasing. So all the factors indicate that yes, women situation is improving. So I'm not sure which parameter you're talking about. Okay, let's go ahead then. The next article that we have here is about a new kind of a scam in the market. By the way, have you seen that scam that comes in these days on your WhatsApp? Like the YouTube video and we'll give you this much money. You just have to like this video and you will get that money, this money. Please don't fall for that. These kind of scams, again, at the end of the day, there is no easy way to earn money. Please remember, just by clicking something, if someone is telling you you can earn money, please do not fall for it. Now, it's a similar kind of a scam that is happening here. The scam is about Aadhaar enabled payment system. So basically what has happened is some banks have allowed this option where you can have financial transactions like on the ATM, like on the credit card, debit card machines without even the OTP, etc. required. As long as a person has your Aadhaar card, with Aadhaar card authentication, the person can actually take out as much money as they want from your bank account. So for this kind of a transaction, they don't need OTP, they don't need bank account detail. All they need is your bank name, Aadhaar number, fingerprint that is captured, that is stolen from somewhere where you actually gave your data. This is how this scam has now come up. Now in these kind of questions, you do not have to research about how the scam is happening. UPSC will not ask you, tell us how the scam is happening. So please don't focus on that. Rather focus on the Aadhaar system. How does that work? What is the problem with data being stolen, etc. That is what is more important for you. Now, as you know, most of the bank accounts in India right now are connected with Aadhaar. The other part of the problem is, for most of the things now, even if you have to buy a SIM card, for most of the things you have to do KYC through your Aadhaar. So when you do a photocopy of your Aadhaar card and then you just give it to someone else, that means that Aadhaar number that you have is being circulated everywhere. So your Aadhaar number should not just be openly given to anyone. In place of that, do you know there is something called virtual ID, VID? Has anyone used this? Has anyone used the virtual ID, VID? Anyone who knows what is this? Anyone who has used it, virtual ID? Okay. So I'll tell you what virtual ID is and how does it work. So basically what happens is, let's say there is a form in which you have to fill the Aadhaar card number. Okay. Let's say there's a bank form where you have to fill the Aadhaar card number and you don't want to give your Aadhaar card number. So what happens is, you go to the UIDAI website and there is an option to generate VID. So there is a random number that will be generated. It is called virtual ID number that will be linked to your Aadhaar number. So if you give someone your VID, that person will not get to know your Aadhaar number, but when they enter in the machine, they will be able to do the KYC because it is connected to your Aadhaar. So this way you don't have to disclose your Aadhaar card number to anyone. You just go to the UIDAI website, generate a VID, it's a 16-digit number. It will be linked to your Aadhaar. This has been going on for a long time. The government also, in fact, has suggested that, as I said, you go and generate your VID number. because VID is a much safer way to transact. You don't have to go ahead and give your Aadhaar card data. Apart from this, there have been other government initiatives as well to protect your Aadhaar information. For example, a two-factor authentication system has also been put into place at many places. Not just your finger identification, but other systems are also checked before your Aadhaar card is disclosed to anyone. But the problem is, as you know, a lot of people have actually gone ahead and stolen the Aadhaar card number. Aadhaar card number being stolen or Aadhaar data being stolen is a very common occurrence. As you can see here, this is a news of just a few months back. Aadhaar data of 11 crore Indian farmers stolen, then Aadhaar data of over 7 crore stolen. Again, this is because many people do not trust the manner in which all this sensitive information is being stored. It all has our biometric information and no one wants to give it to them. That is why many people have even filed a complaint in the Supreme Court against Aadhaar. That is why Supreme Court has said Aadhaar card is not mandatory. But the problem is, although Aadhaar card is not mandatory, but most of the government schemes will only work if you have your Aadhaar. So although government has not made it mandatory, but it is indirectly almost mandatory. You go and buy anything, you will have to give your Aadhaar card number. So although it's not mandatory, but on the other hand, it is still something that you cannot really afford to live without. That is the problem. It is needed almost everywhere, from SIM card to bank account. You go and buy anything, you go and buy your car, you go and, even if let's say you open up a Paytm account these days, they'll ask you for an Aadhaar number. All of that is required. For any loan that you go for in the bank, they'll ask you for Aadhaar number. So yes, on one hand, for example, the God says oxygen is not necessary. You can leave oxygen if you want to, but you can't. As simple as that. Nothing is absolutely necessary, but at the end of the day, you will have to take it. This was our last article from the mains examination point of view. Let me see if there are some questions before we go ahead and discuss a couple of articles from the prelims examination point of view. Yes, it is required for almost everything. Yes, even entrance exam is required. Irfan is saying POSH cases not gone to Supreme Court or High Court. No, so POSH is not a tribunal that the cases will go to Supreme Court or High Court. POSH case, so basically the Internal Complaints Committee has to do this, and the police will investigate the matter, and it will start at the trial court level. It's not that POSH cases will start at Supreme Court, High Court level. Nisha is saying, what was there when there was Aadhaar? Nisha, before there was Aadhaar, there used to be something called freedom. Now there is Aadhaar. But jokes apart, no. There was nothing like this when we had Aadhaar. There are other countries that have their own concepts. Like Sri Lanka also has copied something very similar to Aadhaar. US has something called the Social Security number. Aadhaar is a good thing. It allows the government to track a lot of people. It allows the government to see who is getting benefits of subsidies, etc. For example, when the government announces that we will be giving this money to the account of the farmer. So how do they identify who is a farmer, who is not a farmer, whose bank account is being run by a farmer or not? This is how they use the Aadhaar number. But again, every law, every policy has certain loopholes, and this also has certain loopholes, and Indians anyways are amazing at exploiting loopholes, and that is what we are seeing here. Let's go ahead then. The next article that we have, especially from the prelims point of view, is that the government of India has started a new policy that is called Meri Life Mera Swachh Shahar. Under this scheme, the government of India is planning to set up one-stop centers for zero waste. So what they will do is, in the cities, they will basically keep one place where you can go and deposit any kind of waste. Plastic waste, food, clothes, any metal that you have, whatever, for example, you have to deposit, you can deposit there. From there, it will be segregated, given out to different places for recycling. This is called Meri Life Mera Swachh Shahar. It is a part of Swachh Bharat Mission Urban 2.0. Now, as you know, the government of India recently started something called the Life Mission. Did you remember? Do you remember we had discussed about this as well? The Life Mission, it was started by our Prime Minister along with many multinational organizations. The idea was that if we have to prevent climate change will not just be prevented from industries and cutting down the emission. We have to make changes in our lifestyle. That was a life mission of the government. Under this only, the scheme called Meri Life Mera Swachh Shahar has been launched by Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. The idea is to focus on RRR, not that RRR. RRR stands for reduce, reuse and recycle. What they want to do is they want to create wealth from waste. They want to see how much waste material can be reused, can be recycled, how can we create energy from that. That is the entire idea of Life mission. Life here stands for Lifestyle for Environment. It is an initiative by a Prime Minister, and as you know, if it's an initiative by a Prime Minister, it has a good probability of being asked in the UPSC examination. So please make sure that you remember this and you read about this. This is what circular economy is. Circular economy means when output of one sector is used in the other sector. So rather than creating waste, you just try and build a circular economy from having one sector, whatever output they are giving you, use in the other one, and that is how it works. For example, turning waste to wealth, utilizing biogas, etc. to generate energy. All these are examples of circular economy. This is the Life movement started by our Prime Minister at COP26 of UNFCCC in Glasgow. Life Global Call for Papers was a kind of a research initiative by multiple universities, academies. All of them were asked to give inputs about how to make lifestyle changes that are beneficial for our environment. The next and the last topic for today is Defense Ministry's initiative called iDEX. iDEX stands for Innovation for Defense Excellence. As you know, the government of India has been trying to ensure that more and more weapons, defense equipments are built in India and we export those outside. For that purpose, the government of India is trying to collaborate with the private sector as well. That collaboration is coming up in the form of iDEX, Innovation for Defense Excellence. In simple terms, the government is inviting ideas from private sector about different types of innovations. What is it that they want to do? How can they innovate in satellites, in different defense systems, etc. That is what iDEX is. Why is it in the news? Because it has just signed 250th contract ever since it has begun. So the government has signed the 250th contract under this mission. That is why it is a landmark movement. Under this mission, many private companies will now be building attachments to the CubeSat, that is small satellites, to bring in more information about surveillance, intelligence, etc. This is the idea of iDEX. Do remember this. These are some facts about iDEX that can be asked. Not iODEX, Baba, not iODEX. I know there are a lot of people who are addicted to iODEX, but let's come back. This is iDEX, not iODEX. iDEX started in April 2018. The idea was that defense technology of the country should be enhanced by the participation of the private sector. It will provide grants, funding for research and development purposes. It will be headed by Defense Innovation Organization, that is a DIO. DIO is a new not-for-profit company established by the Government of India to run mainly this, that is the iDEX. It is in simple terms an initiative to collaborate, for the government to collaborate with the private sector to bring in more defense technology and R&D. And this brings us to the end of today's discussion. There are a couple of practice questions right in here for you. First is based on the concept of bail is rule, jail is an exception. Second is based on the concept of the POSH Act. Don't forget today's homework. You have to tell me in the comment section which are the different organizations in India that are allowed to work on the principles of natural justice. Those who FISA, you can download the PPT, the entire PPT from the description and see whichever slide that you want. As you know, all these PPTs can be downloaded. Look at the description section and you will get a link to download the PDF and you can revise whenever you want. Thank you so much for joining in. Do try and attempt these questions as well. I'll see you tomorrow for the next session of the Hindu Newspaper Analysis. Bye-bye. Have a good day. Jai Hind.